Good afternoon. This is Knowledge Time. Welcome, alchemists. Today I'll be reading from the book The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. I am currently in Chapter 9, Confront Your Dark Side, The Law of Repression, Part 4, the Integrated Human. In the course of our lives, we inevitably meet people who appear to be especially comfortable with themselves. They display certain traits that help give this impression. They are able to laugh at themselves. They can admit to certain shortcomings in their character, as well as to mistakes they have made. They have a playful, sometimes impish edge to them, as if they have retained more of the child within. They can play their role in life with a little bit of distance. See the last section of Chapter 3. At times, they can be charmingly spontaneous. With such people, signal to us is a greater authenticity. If most of us have lost a lot of our natural traits in becoming socialized adults, the authentic types have somehow managed to keep them alive and active. We can contrast them easily with the opposite type, people who are touchy. People who are touchy, who are hypersensitive to any perceived slight, and who give the impression of being somewhat uncomfortable with themselves and having something to hide. We humans are masters at smelling the difference. We can almost feel it with people in their nonverbal behavior, the relaxed or tense body language, the flowing or halting tone of voice, the way the eyes gaze and let you in, the genuine smile or lack of it. One thing is for certain: we are completely drawn to the authentic types and unconsciously repulsed by their opposite. The reason for this is simple. We all secretly mourn for the child part of our character we have lost. The wildness, the spontaneity, the intensity of experience, the open mind. Our overall energy is diminished by the loss. Those who admit that air of authenticity signal to us another possibility, that of being an adult who has managed to integrate the child and the adult, the dark and the light, the unconscious and the conscious mind. We yearn to be around them. Perhaps some of their energy will rub off on us. If Richard Nixon in many ways epitomizes the inauthentic type, we find many examples of the opposite to inspire us. In politics, men like Winston Churchill and Abraham Lincoln. In the arts, people like Charlie Chaplin and Josephine Baker. In science, someone like Albert Einstein. In social life in general, someone like Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. And these types indicate for us the path to follow, which largely centers on self-awareness. Conscious of our shadow, we can control, channel, and integrate it. Aware of what we have lost, we can reconnect to that part of ourselves that has sunk into the shadow. The following are 4 clear and practical steps for achieving this. See the shadow. This is the most difficult step in the process. The shadow is something we deny and repress. It is so much easier to dig up and moralize about the dark qualities of others. It is almost unnatural for us to look inward at this side of ourselves. But remember that you are only half a human if you keep this buried. Be intrepid in this process. The best way to begin is to look for indirect signs, as indicated in the sections above. For instance, take note of any particular one-sided empathetic traits in yourself. Assume that the opposite trait lies buried deep within. And from there, try to see more signs of this trait in your behavior. Look at your own emotional outbursts and moments of extreme touchiness. Somebody or something has struck a chord. Your sensitivity to a remark or Imputation indicates a shadow quality that is stirring in the form of a deep insecurity. Bring it into the light. Look deeply at your tendencies to project emotions and bad qualities onto people you know, or even entire groups. For instance, say you really loathe narcissistic types or pushy people. What is happening is that you are probably brushing up against your own narcissistic tendencies and secret desire to be more assertive in the form of a vehement denial or hatred. We are particularly sensitive to traits and weaknesses in others that we are repressing in ourselves. Look at moments in your youth, late teens, early 20s, in which you acted in a rather insensitive or even cruel manner. When you were younger, you had less control of the shadow and it came out more naturally, not with the repressed force of later years. Later in his career, the writer Robert Bly, born 1926, began to feel depressed. His writing had become sterile. He started to think more and more about the shadow side of his character. He was determined to find signs of it and consciously scrutinize it. Blau was the bohemian type of artist, very much active in the counterculture of the 1960s. His artistic roots went back to the romantic romantic artists of the early 19th century. Men and women who extolled spontaneity and naturalness. In much of Bly's own writing, he railed at advertising men and business people. As he saw it, they were so calculating, planning everything to the extreme, afraid of the chaos of life, and quite manipulative. And yet, as he looked inward, Blau could catch glimpses of such calculating, manipulative qualities in himself. He too secretly feared moments of chaos in life, like to plan things out and control events. He could be quite malicious with people he perceived to be so different. But in fact, there was a part of the stockbroker and advertising man within him. Perhaps it was the deeper part of himself. Others told him that they saw him as rather classical in his taste and in his writings, constructing things well, something that bothered him, since he thought the opposite. But as he became increasingly honest with himself, he realized they were right. People can often see our shadow better than we can, and it would be wise to elicit their frank opinions on the subject. Step by step, he unearthed the dark qualities within, rigid, overly moralistic, etc. And in doing so, he felt reconnected with the other half of his physique. He could be honest with himself and channel the shadow creatively. His depression lifted, as well as the writer's block. Take this process deeper by re-examining the earlier version of yourself. Look at traits in childhood that were drummed out of you by your parents and peers, certain weaknesses and vulnerabilities or forms of behavior, traits you were made to feel ashamed of. Perhaps your parents did not like your introspective tendencies or your interest in certain subjects that were not of their taste. They instead steered you toward careers and interests that suited them. Look at emotions you were once prone to, things that sparked a sense of awe or excitement that has gone missing. You have become more like others as you have gotten older, and you must rediscover the lost, authentic parts of yourself. Finally, look at your dreams as the most direct and clear view of your shadow. Only there will you find the kinds of behavior you have carefully avoided in conscious life. The shadow is talking to you in various ways. Don't look for symbols or hidden meanings. Pay attention instead to the emotional tone and overall feelings that they inspire, holding on to them throughout the day. This could be unexpected bold behavior on your part, or intense anxiety spurred by certain situations or sensations by being physically trapped, or of soaring above it all, or exploring a place that is forbidden and beyond the boundaries. The anxieties could relate to insecurities you are now confronting. the soaring, the exploring our hidden desires trying to rise to consciousness. Get in the habit of writing your dreams down and paying deep attention to their feeling tone. The more you go through this process and see the outlines of your shadow, the easier it will become. You will find more signs as your tense muscles for repression loosen up. At a certain point, the pain of going through this turns into excitement at what you're uncovering. Embrace the shadow. Your natural reaction is uncovering and facing up to your dark side is to feel uncomfortable and maintain only a surface awareness of it. Your goal here must be the opposite. Not only complete acceptance of the shadow, but the desire to integrate it into your present personality. From an early age, Abraham Lincoln liked to analyze himself, and a recurrent theme in his self-examinations was that he had a split personality. On the one hand, an ambitious, almost cruel streak to his nature, and on the other, a sensitive and softness that made him frequently depressed. Both sides of his nature made him feel uncomfortable and odd. On the rough side, for instance, he loved boxing and thoroughly thrashing his opponent in the ring. In law and politics, he had a rather scanty sense of humor. Once he wrote some anonymous letters to a newspaper attacking a politician he thought of as a buffoon. The letters were so effective that the target went mad with rage. He found out that Lincoln was the source of them and challenged him to a duel. This became the talk of the town and proved quite embarrassing to Lincoln. He managed to get out of the duel, but he vowed to never indulge his cruel streak again. He recognized the trait in himself and would not deny it. Instead, he would pour his aggressive, competitive energy into winning debates and elections. On his soft side, he loved poetry, felt tremendous affection for animals, and hated witnessing any kind of physical cruelty. He hated drinking and what it did to people. At his worst, he was prone to fits of deep melancholy and brooding over death. All in all, he felt himself to be far too sensitive for the rough and tumble world of politics. Instead of denying this side of himself, he challenged it into incredible empathy for the public, for the average man and woman. Caring deeply about the loss of lives in the war, he put all his efforts into ending it early. He did not project evil unto the South, but rather emphasized with its plight and planned on a peace that was not retributive. He also incorporated it into a healthy sense of humor about himself, making frequent jokes about his ugliness, high-pitched voice, and brooding nature. By embracing and integrating such opposing qualities into his public persona, he gave the impression of tremendous authenticity. People could identify with him in a way never seen before with a political leader. Explore the shadow. Consider the shadow as having depths that contain great creative energy. You want to explore these depths, which include more primitive forms of thinking and the darkest impulses that came out of our animal nature. As children, our minds were much more fluid and open. We would make the most surprising and creative association between ideas. But as we get older, we tend to tighten this down. We live in a sophisticated, high-tech world dominated by statistics and ideas gleaned from big data. Free associations between ideas, images from dreams, hunches, and intuitions seem irrational and subjective. But this leads to the most sterile forms of thinking. The unconscious, the shadow side of the mind, has powers we must learn to tap into. And in fact, some of the most creative people in our midst actively engage this side of thinking. Albert Einstein based one of his theories of relativity on an image from a dream. The mathematician Jacques Hadamard made his most important discoveries while boarding a bus or taking a shower. Hunches that came out of nowhere, or what he claimed to be his unconscious. Louis Pasteur made his great discovery about immunization based on a rather free association of ideas after an accident in his laboratory. Steve Jobs claimed that his most effective ideas came from intuitions, moments when his mind roamed most freely. Understand, the conscious thinking we depend on is quite limited. We can hold on to only so much information in short and long term memory. But the unconscious contains an almost limitless amount of material from memories, experiences, and information absorbed in study. After prolonged research or work on a problem, when we relax our minds in dreams or while we are performing unrelated banal activities, the unconscious begins to go to work and associate all sorts of random ideas. Some of the more interesting ones babbling to the surface. We all have dreams, intuitions, and free associations of ideas, but we often refuse to pay attention to them or take them seriously. Instead, you want to develop the habit of using this form of thought more often by having unstructured time in which you can play with ideas. Widen the options you consider and pay serious attention to what comes to you in less conscious states of mind. In a similar vein, you want to explore from within your own darkest impulses, even those that might seem criminal, and find a way to express them in your work or externalize them in some fashion. In a journal, for instance, we all have aggressive and antisocial desires, even toward those we love. We also have traumas from our earliest years that are associated with emotions we prefer to forget. The greatest art in all media somehow expresses these depths, which causes a powerful reaction in us all because they are so repressed. Such is the power of the films of Ingmar Bergman or the novels of Fyodor Dostoevsky, and you can have the same power by externalizing your dark side. Show the shadow. Most of the time, we secretly suffer from the endless social codes we have to adhere to. We have to seem so nice and agreeable, always going along with the group. We better not show too much confidence or ambition. Seem humble and similar to everyone else. That's how the game is played. In following this path, we gain comfort by fitting in, but we also become defensive and secretly resentful. Being so nice becomes a habit, which easily turns into timidity, lack of confidence, and indecision. At the same time, our shadow will show itself, but unconsciously in explosive fits and starts, and often to our detriment. It would be wise to look at those who are successful in their field. Inevitably, we will see the most of them are much less bound by these codes. They are generally more assertive and overly ambitious. They care much less what others think of them. They flout the conventions openly and proudly, and they are not punished but greatly rewarded. Steve Jobs is a classic example. He showed his rough shadow side in his way of working with others. Our tendency is looking at people like Jobs is to admire their creativity and subtract their darker qualities as unnecessary. If only he had been nicer, he would have been a saint. But in fact, the dark side was inextricably interwoven with his power and creativity, his ability to not listen to others, to go his own way, and be a bit rough about it were key parts of his success, which we venerate. And so it is with many creative, powerful people. Subtract their active shadow, and they would be like everyone else. Understand, you pay a greater price for being so nice and differential than for consciously showing your shadow. First, to follow the later path, you must begin by respecting your own opinions more and those of others less, particularly when it comes to your areas of expertise, to the field you have immersed yourself in. Trust your native genius and the ideas you have come up with. Second, get in the habit in your daily life of asserting yourself more and compromising less. Do this under control and at opportune moments. Third, start caring less what people think of you. You will feel a tremendous sense of liberation. Fourth, realize that at times you must offend and even hurt people who block your path, who have ugly values, who unjustly criticize you. Use such moments of clear injustice to bring out your shadow and show it proudly. Fifth, feel free to play the impudent, willful child who mocks the stupidity and hypocrisy of others. Finally, flaunt the very conventions that others follow so scrumptiously. For centuries, and still to this day, general roles represent the most powerful convention of all. What men and women can do or say has been highly controlled, to the point where it seems almost to represent biological differences instead of social conventions. Women in particular are socialized to be extra nice and agreeable. They feel continual pressure to adhere to this and mistake it for something natural and biological. Some of the most influential women in history were those who deliberately broke with these codes. Performers like Marilyn Dietrich and Josephine Baker, political figures such as Eleanor Roosevelt, businesswomen such as Coco Chanel. They brought out their shadow and showed it by acting in ways that were traditionally thought of as masculine, blending and confusing gender roles. Even Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis gained great power by playing against the type of the traditional political wife. She had a pronounced malicious streak. Even Norman Mailer first met her in 1960, and she seemed to poke fun at him. He saw that something drool and hard came into her eyes as if she were a very naughty 80-year-old indeed. When people displeased her, she showed it rather openly. She seemed to care little what others thought of her, and she became a sensation because of the naturalness she exuded. In general, consider this a form of exorcism. Once you show these desires and impulses, they no longer lie hidden in corners of your personality, twisting and operating in secret ways. You have released your demons and enhanced your presence as an authentic human. In this way, the shadow becomes your ally. Quote, unfortunately, there is no doubt about the fact that man is, as a whole, less good than he imagined himself or wants to be. Everyone carries a shadow, and the less it is embodied in the individual's conscious life, the blacker and denser it is. By Carl Jung. Tomorrow I'll be starting chapter 10, Beware the Fragile Ego, the Law of Envy. In conclusion, pretty much this, we went over the integrated human, and pretty much what I got from it was express yourself.